In 1950, Detroit wasn't building muscle cars the way we defined them in the 1960s, but the seeds were already being planted. Unfortunately, most of these high-performance outliers were one-offs, low-production rarities, or simply misunderstood. In a country still reeling from wartime rationing and shifting toward conservative family values, cars that emphasized brute power over comfort or economy were often quietly discontinued. Here are 10 American supermuscle cars from 1950 that roared into existence, then vanished just as fast.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 10, the 1958 Ford Fairlane 500 Interceptor Special, exploring its ambitions, muscle car credentials, and why it ultimately struggled to leave a lasting mark. Tonight's topic takes us into the late 1950s, a time when American car makers were stuffing big engines into big cars, chasing horsepower in the showroom and respect on the street. The 1958 Ford Fairlane 500 Interceptor Special is one of those machines. It had a big block V8. It had flashy styling. It had an intimidating name, Interceptor, and yet somehow it never fully delivered on that promise. The Interceptor Special was Ford's early attempt to position the Fairlane as something more than just a family cruiser. With 352 and 390 cubic inch engines under the hood, it had serious firepower. But in terms of engineering finesse, performance execution, and brand identity, it stumbled. Let's explore how the Interceptor badge came to be, what Ford was aiming for, and why this car, despite impressive stats, has been largely forgotten in muscle car history. By the mid-1950s, Ford was in a branding arms race. Chevrolet was dominating the sales charts, while Chrysler was pushing engineering boundaries. Ford responded by reshaping its lineup, launching cars like the Fairlane, Thunderbird, and eventually the Galaxy. The Fairlane 500 was Ford's upper-trim full-size car. In 1957, the Fairlane helped Ford outsell Chevrolet for the first time in years. So for 1958, Ford doubled down, adding more chrome, more options, and more engine choices. And one of those options was the Interceptor Special Package. The Interceptor name sounds like something out of a fighter jet commercial, and that's no accident. The late 50s were peak jet age. Every automaker wanted their cars to look, sound, and sell like space-age technology. Key features of the Interceptor Special. Package, available engines, 352 cubic inch V8, Interceptor Special, 300 horsepower, 390 cubic inch V8, very limited availability late in the year, 330 plus horsepower, 3-speed manual, overdrive, or cruise-o-matic automatic, Interceptor badging, dual exhaust, aggressive front grille, and often paired with sportier trim and two-tone paint. Full-size 2- or 4-door Fairlane 500 sedans and hardtops. On paper, it was exactly what the market was starting to demand, a full-size car with serious muscle. In terms of raw specs, the Interceptor had everything needed to qualify as a proto-muscle car. Big block V8 engines with over 300 horsepower. Rear-wheel drive, body-on-frame layout, aggressive name and sporty trim package. Room for passengers but power for fun. The 352 Interceptor Vi8 was a solid performer. It was part of the new FE Ford Edsel engine family, which would later underpin some of Ford's most famous big blocks, including the 427 and 428 Cobra Jet. When equipped with dual exhaust and a 4-barrel carb, the 352 Interceptor could hustle a heavy Fairlane to 60 miles per hour in about 9 seconds. Not bad for the era. Despite all the right ingredients, the 1958 Fairlane 500 Interceptor Special didn't make a lasting mark. Let's examine why. The Fairlane was a large car. Curb weights approached 4,000 pounds, and the suspension was tuned more for comfort than cornering. Even with the big V8s, it felt heavy and vague at speed. Straight-line performance was decent, but the driving experience was inconsistent, especially compared to more nimble offerings from GM or Chrysler. You could floor it and make noise, but it didn't feel sporty. Ford's FE engines were tough and torquey, but they weren't yet refined. Early 352s had problems with valve train durability and heat management. And the 1958 model year was a transition year. Fuel economy dropped, and quality control issues plagued much of Ford's lineup. Add to that a floaty suspension, vague steering, and lackluster brakes, and you had a car that looked the part but didn't back it up dynamically. The 58 Fairlane, like many cars of the time, suffered from design excess. It had tail fins, chrome spears, a massive grille, and twin headlamps. A mid-year update Ford rushed to market. While some found it handsome, others saw it as bloated and overwrought. Number 9, the 1957 Plymouth Fury with a high-output 318 V8, focusing on its early performance credentials, its unique position in automotive history, and why it is so often overlooked as a muscle car precursor. Today's topic is a car that sits right at the crossroads of style, speed, and missed opportunity. The 1957 Plymouth Fury. This was the first year Plymouth offered the Fury as its own distinct model, and it was a very different machine from the bloated, luxury-laden versions that would follow in the 1960s. In 1957, the Fury was light, aggressive, and powered by a high-output 318 cubic-inch V8 that made real power. In short, it was fast. So why isn't it remembered alongside the Pontiac GTO, Oldsmobile 442, or Ford Fairlane GT? The answer lies in timing, image, and how performance was, or wasn't, marketed in the late 1950s. Let's dig in. In 1957, Plymouth underwent a design revolution. Their marketing slogan was, "Suddenly it's 1960," and they weren't exaggerating. That year, Virgil Exner's forward-look styling hit the streets with sharp fins, aggressive grills, and a sleek, low-slung silhouette that looked positively futuristic compared to competitors like Ford or Chevrolet. Key design features: dramatic tail fins, wide horizontal grille, long, low roofline, two-door hardtop body only for the Fury, gold anodized trim to set it apart from lesser Plymouths, but the looks were only half the story. Under the hood, the Fury had real performance credentials. Let's get into what powered the Fury in 1957 engine. 318 cubic inches, 5.2 liters, part of Plymouth's new A-Series V8 family. Carburation, dual 4-barrel carburetors, compression 9.25 to 1, high for the 50s time. Horsepower, 290 horsepower. Torque, 345 pound-feet. These were serious numbers for the era, and better than Chevrolet's top Bel Air V8. The Fury's engine was tuned for speed, the camshaft was hotter, the heads breathed better, and with twin 4-barrels, it had the kind of throttle response you'd associate with a proper muscle car. In terms of power-to-weight ratio, the 57 Fury was one of the quickest American production cars of its time. Unlike most of its full-size contemporaries, the 1957 Fury was offered only as a two-door hardtop and only in limited numbers. This wasn't a broad appeal family sedan. It was a showcase car. Roughly 3,400 pounds, light by late 50s standards. Combine that with nearly 300 horsepower, and you had a car that could easily break into the high 15-second range in the quarter mile. For 1957, that was fast. The Fury had stiffer suspension and better tires than other Plymouths, making it sporty and responsive, if still a bit floaty by modern standards. So why don't we call it a muscle car? Despite the stats, the 1957 Fury is rarely included in muscle car history. Here's why. The term muscle car didn't exist in 1957. Buyers weren't looking for street machines. They were still drawn to chrome, comfort, and gadgets. Plymouth was a conservative brand. It didn't market to young hot rodders like Pontiac would later do with the GTO. The Fury was stylish but seen as upscale. It looked more like a car for a stylish dad than a quarter-mile bruiser. Only about 7,438 units were made in 1957. That exclusivity made it special, but also forgettable in the broader cultural memory. The Fury name would later become associated with huge, heavy sedans by the late 60s and 70s. Those models erased any memory of its nimble beginnings. Interestingly, the 1957 Fury did gain some cultural recognition, just not for its speed. Thanks to Stephen King's Christine and the 1983 film adaptation, The '58 Fury became synonymous with a demonic killer car. While the film used 1958 models, with only minor styling changes from '57, the Fury became a pop culture icon for horror, not horsepower. That said, even Christine didn't revive interest in the Fury's early performance credentials. The 1957 Plymouth Fury had nearly every element of a muscle car, muscle trait. 1957 Plymouth Fury, big engine 318 V8, dual quads, light body, two-door hardtop, rear-wheel drive, strong straight-line speed, performance image. Marketing missed the mark. Affordable appeal, priced higher than average. It was a factory hot rod built before the public knew how to ask for one. Number 8, 1955 DeSoto Fireflight with the 291 Hemi Phi 8, focusing on its engineering, performance, and historical placement, as well as why it faded in the shadow of Chrysler's more glamorous 300 series. Today, we're stepping into the mid-1950s, a time of tail fins, chrome, and rising horsepower. More specifically, we're taking a close look at a car that had all the right hardware, but failed to become a household name in American performance history. The 1955 DeSoto Fireflight. Armed with a 291 cubic inch Hemi Phi 8, this car had the bones of a muscle car before the term even existed. But unlike its corporate cousin, the 1955 Chrysler C300, the Fireflight never got the glory, the racing heritage, or the marketing push that could have made it a legend. Why did a smooth, fast, and technically advanced car fall into obscurity? That's what we're here to explore. The DeSoto Fireflight debuted in 1955 as DeSoto's top-tier model, launched to coincide with Chrysler's major design overhaul under Virgil Exner's Forward Look program. Stylistically, the 1955 DeSoto lineup was elegant and modern. Wraparound windshield, two-tone paint schemes, sweeping chrome trim, jet-age taillights, and modest fins. The Fireflight sat above the Fire Dome in DeSoto's hierarchy, intended to be a performance luxury hybrid, comparable to what Buick or Oldsmobile were doing in the GM family. And under the hood, a real gem. Let's talk specs. Engine, 291 cubic inch, 4.8 liter. Hemi Phi 8, carburetor, 4-barrel. Compression ratio, 8.5 to 1. Horsepower, 200 horsepower, in a time when 200 was a big number. Torque, approximately 300 pound-feet. Transmission, Powerflight 2-speed automatic with dashboard-mounted lever. This was part of Chrysler's Firepower Hemi family, known for hemispherical combustion chambers that allowed for efficient airflow and high compression, critical for power and smoothness. By mid-1950s standards, the 291 Hemi was cutting-edge, smooth, torquey, and capable of moving the large Fireflight with real urgency. 60 miles per hour came in under 12 seconds, fast for 1955, especially for a luxury car weighing nearly 4,000 pounds. So what held it back from being remembered like the Chrysler 300? Here's the crux of the issue. Chrysler Corporation already had a halo car. It was the new C300, also released in 1955, and it was engineered specifically to dominate NASCAR and impress buyers with 300 horsepower, a magic number at the time. The C300 had a larger 331 or 380 cubic inches. 300 horsepower 354 Hemi came with dual 4-barrel carbs, was marketed as America's most powerful car. Compared to the Fireflight, which had a single carb and 200 horsepower, the Chrysler 300 had both the numbers and the image. As a result, the 300 became a status symbol. The Fireflight became the other Hemi car. Even though both shared corporate DNA, DeSoto never got the budget or branding to market the Fireflight as a performance flagship. It's also important to understand how the Fireflight was positioned. Unlike the stripped-down C300, the Fireflight was fully equipped with luxury appointments, plush interior trim, full carpeting, optional power steering, brakes and windows, two-tone paint with heavy chrome accents. It was a fast car, but it wasn't a hot car. DeSoto aimed the Fireflight at middle-class families moving up in the world. It was sporty for the dad, roomy for the kids, and flashy enough for the neighbors, but not rebellious. It didn't appeal to youth, racers, or speed freaks. This is what kept the Fireflight out of the muscle car lineage. It lacked the attitude and branding that muscle cars thrived on a decade later. In its debut year, Dotto actually did very well. Over 114,000 units sold, with the Fireflight accounting for roughly over 10,000 of those. But Dotto's fortunes were already in trouble. Chrysler management favored Dodge and Chrysler brands. The 1958 recession hit mid-priced brands hard. Dotto never got the performance variance it deserved. By 1961, Dotto was gone. The Fireflight, despite its strong start in Hemi credibility, never had time to evolve into a performance icon. Number 7, the 1958 Mercury Turnpike Cruiser with the Super Marauder Fury 8, focusing on its historical context, technical achievements, and why it disappeared into obscurity despite groundbreaking power. Tonight, we'll explore a forgotten titan of 1950s American automotive history, a car that, for a fleeting moment, held the title of most powerful production engine in the U.S. We're talking about the 1958 Mercury Turnpike Cruiser, specifically the rare and extraordinary version fitted with the Super Marauder 430 V8, rated at an astonishing 400 horsepower. In an era before muscle cars existed, this was raw, unapologetic power, but it wasn't packaged for the street racer or hot rodder. It was dressed in gold trim, covered in chrome, and sold as a luxury car for the highways of tomorrow. So why don't more people talk about it today? Let's dig into the engineering, marketing, and the unfortunate timing that kept Mercury's 400 horsepower monster out of the Muscle Car Hall of Fame. To understand the Turnpike Cruiser, we first need to understand Mercury's position in the late 1950s. Mercury was Ford's middle-tier brand, placed between Ford and Lincoln. It was always a little awkward, not as mass-market as Ford, not as prestigious as Lincoln. Often overlooked when GM's Pontiac and Oldsmobile were grabbing performance headlines. In 1957, Mercury introduced the Turnpike Cruiser as a futuristic, high-style model, meant to reflect American progress and highway travel. The name was no accident. The Turnpike Cruiser was built to embody the idea of cruising on the new interstate highway system, which was still in its infancy, and it looked the part. Wrap-around breezeway rear window that retracted downward. Jet-age tail fins and antennae. Tons of chrome and gold anodized trim. Push-button transmission controls. This was a car from the space age, for buyers who wanted to flaunt wealth and modernity. Let's get to the heart of the beast, the Super Marauder 430 V8. This wasn't just a big engine, it was the first mass-produced American V8 rated at 400 horsepower, a full 5 years before the 1964 GTO helped define the muscle car movement. Here's what made it special. Displacement, 430 cubic inches, 7.0 liters. Configuration, triple two-barrel carburetors, aka tri-power. Compression ratio, 10.5 to 1. Horsepower, 400 horsepower at 5,600 RPM. Torque, 490 pound-feet at 580 degrees Celsius. 3,200 RPM. This was a brute. It had more power than the Chrysler 300D and more torque than any production V8 in 1958. Mercury offered the Super Marauder package as a dealer-installed option, incredibly rare, and very briefly as a factory-installed performance upgrade in the Turnpike Cruiser and Park Lane models. So with all that firepower, what went wrong? While the Super Marauder was a technical marvel, it suffered from a fatal mismatch between performance and image. The Turnpike Cruiser was huge, over 4,500 pounds curb weight. Ornate to the point of being gaudy, loaded with gadgets and luxury features, sold to older conservative buyers, not performance enthusiasts. This was a luxury highway car, not something you'd take to the drag strip or a racetrack. So while it could sprint 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 8.5 seconds, few owners ever tested it, and most buyers never even knew the 400 horsepower option existed. Mercury didn't aggressively advertise it, and it was priced out of reach for the younger market that wanted performance without all the opulence. It was too powerful for its audience and too fancy for its potential fans. Another major issue was timing. The American economy dipped into recession in 1958. Mid-tier brands like Mercury, DeSoto, Packard, and others suffered the most. Sales of large luxury cars declined, and buyers turned toward more economical vehicles. On top of that, Mercury's sales dropped by nearly 60% from 1957 to 1958. The Turnpike Cruiser was discontinued after 1958. The Super Marauder disappeared almost instantly. There was no follow-up, no second generation, and no push to develop a performance sub-brand like Pontiac's GTO or Dodge's later Charger. Number 6, the 1953 Oldsmobile Fiesta. 98 convertible, focusing on its engineering, cultural context, rarity, and why it's largely forgotten despite its performance and prestige. Tonight, we delve into one of the most exclusive and overlooked performance luxury convertibles of the early 1950s. The 1953 Oldsmobile Fiesta 98. This wasn't just a pretty convertible. It came equipped with a potent 165 horsepower rocket V8, carried Oldsmobile's prestige nameplate, and was meant to be a halo model, a showpiece for GM's innovation. But despite its power and style, only 458 were built, and the Fiesta faded into obscurity almost as quickly as it arrived. Tonight, we'll explore why this limited production marvel never gained traction in the public consciousness and what it tells us about GM's ambitions and limitations during the early post-war automotive boom. To understand the 1953 Fiesta, we need to begin in 1949, when Oldsmobile released the Rocket 88, the car many historians credit as the first true American muscle car in spirit. Oldsmobile was ahead of the curve. The Rocket V8 was a modern OHV overhead valve design, far more advanced than the flathead still in wide use. The engine produced surprising performance in relatively lightweight bodies. It gave Olds a performance reputation it had never had before. By 1953, Oldsmobile had built up both engineering credibility and market success. It was riding high as a GM division that could blend power and luxury. That same year, the company rolled out something special, a car to showcase the best of what Oldsmobile could offer, the Fiesta 98 convertible. The Fiesta was part of a new GM strategy in 1953 to release ultra-limited, high-style convertibles across its divisions. Cadillac El Dorado, Buick Skylark, Dotto Oldsmobile Fiesta. These were essentially production show cars, packed with features, priced high, and meant to convey luxury, prestige, and innovation. For Oldsmobile, the Fiesta was the crown jewel, styling and features, chrome everywhere, bumpers, trim, windshield, grille, wide, flowing body lines that were both elegant and athletic, exclusive two-tone paint schemes, fully loaded with power steering, power brakes, power windows, power seat, signal-seeking radio, padded dashboard, beautiful leather interior with special trim and detail work. It sat on the 98 series platform, Oldsmobile's most luxurious, making it longer and heavier than the hot-rodding 88s. The Fiesta wasn't just a looker, it had real performance under the hood. Engine, 303 cubic inch rocket V8. Horsepower, 165 horsepower, impressive for 1953. Transmission, 4-speed hydromatic automatic. Performance, 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 13 seconds. Quite respectable for a 4,400-pound luxury convertible. That might not sound fast today, but in 1953 it was serious power, especially when many rivals were still putting out 100 to 120 horsepower. The Fiesta was proof that Oldsmobile hadn't abandoned performance. It just wrapped it in chrome, leather, and prestige. Despite its power, luxury, and good looks, the Fiesta barely sold. Just 458 units were produced, and it never returned for a second model year. Why? The 1953 Fiesta cost around $5,700, more than a new Cadillac Series 62 convertible, and nearly double the price of a well-equipped Olds 88. For most buyers, Oldsmobile simply didn't have the prestige to justify that kind of spending. Oldsmobile was known for mid-priced cars with surprising performance, not for top-shelf convertibles. Buyers with that kind of money gravitated toward Cadillac, Packard, or Chrysler Imperial. The Fiesta didn't have the name cachet to back up its price tag. GM never intended for the Fiesta to be a permanent fixture. It was released alongside the Skylark and El Dorado as part of a limited-run experiment, a high-fashion showcase to test styling, technology, and public reaction. The 1953 Oldsmobile Fiesta is a perfect example of a performance luxury hybrid that was both ahead of its time and doomed by its context. It foreshadowed the personal luxury car trend that would explode in the 1960s. It had the power and equipment of a muscle luxury car, a full decade before that became a formula. Number 5, the 1957 Dodge Custom Royal Lancer Super D 500, exploring its performance, design, historical context, and why it ultimately faded into obscurity despite being a serious early muscle car contender. Tonight's topic is a car that could have and should have become a performance icon, but never quite found its place in the American automotive imagination. The 1957 Dodge Custom Royal Lancer Super D 500 340 horsepower, dual 4-barrel carburetors, aggressive styling, and serious speed, the Super D 500 had all the makings of a muscle car, before that term even existed. But despite its raw power, this Dodge has become more of a trivia question than a milestone. Why? Because in the late 1950s, Dodge didn't know what it wanted to be. And that identity crisis cost the Super D 500 its rightful place in muscle car history. Let's set the stage. It's 1957. America is booming. Elvis is king. Chrome is king. Tail fins are king. The car world is about style, size, and power. Chrysler Corporation was on a roll. Its forward-look design, led by Virgil Exner, had transformed the company's image from stodgy to sleek. Every division, Plymouth, Dodge, DeSoto, Chrysler, and Imperial, was now offering futuristic styling, big engines, and bold names. Dodge sat right in the middle, not quite budget like Plymouth, not quite upscale like Chrysler. It was supposed to be the performance brand of the Chrysler family, but it was also trying to be stylish, luxurious, affordable, youthful, and everything in between. That split identity becomes central to the story of the Super D 500. The Super D 500 was a high-performance option package available on Dodge's top-tier model, the Custom Royal Lancer. It was the ultimate expression of Dodge's performance ambitions in 1957. Mechanical specs engine, 325 cubic inch Hemi Phi 8. Carburation, dual Carter 4-barrel carburetors. Horsepower, 340 horsepower. Torque, around 400 pound-feet. Transmission, optional 3-speed torque flight push button, automatic 0 to 60 miles per hour, approximately 7.5 seconds. Blisteringly fast for a full-size 1957 car. Brakes and suspension, upgraded heavy-duty components for high-speed stability. In 1957 short, this was serious performance, putting it on par with contemporary Corvettes and just behind Chrysler's legendary 300C. Beyond performance, the Custom Royal Lancer was dripping in late 50s style, huge tail fins and jet pod taillights, wraparound windshield and low-slung stance, two-tone or even three-tone paint schemes, chrome everywhere, bumpers, grills, side trim, interior accents, upscale interior with padded dash, deluxe steering wheel, and ornate fabrics. This was Dodge's full-size flagship, and it looked the part. The Super D 500 badge gave it an edge of menace that contrasted with its otherwise elegant lines. If the Super D 500 had the power, looks, and pedigree, why did it fade from memory? Dodge didn't have a clear identity in the 50s. Was it a performance brand? A value brand? A luxury contender? In trying to appeal to everyone, it didn't commit to any one image. Unlike, say, Chevrolet with its youth focus or Pontiac later with performance. The Super D 500 came off as an expensive version of a mass-market car, not a focused muscle or luxury model. Consumers weren't sure what it was supposed to be. Chrysler Corporation competed with itself. The Chrysler 300C offered more performance and prestige. The DeSoto Adventurer was flashier and more exclusive. Even Plymouth offered the Fury with lightweight speed. The Super D 500 sat awkwardly in the middle, more powerful than many rivals, but without the exclusivity or focused marketing to make it stand out. Unlike Chevrolet's Corvette or Ford's Thunderbird, Dodge didn't push the Super D 500 in popular media. It wasn't in films, it wasn't a motorsports darling, and it wasn't marketed as a game changer. Without a narrative, it was just another trim package to most buyers. 1957 was also a bad year for Chrysler quality control. Rust issues, electrical problems, and rushed assembly plagued many cars. These problems damaged consumer confidence, especially in higher-end Dodges like the Custom Royal. Number 4, the 1957 Hudson Hornet Hollywood 5.8, exploring its background, performance, and the complex identity crisis it faced in the hands of AMC. Tonight, we focus on the 1957 Hudson Hornet Hollywood 5.8, a car that, by all rights, should have carried the torch of one of America's greatest performance legends. It had the look, it had the V8, it even had the name Hudson Hornet, once a dominant force in stock car racing. And yet, by 1957, the Hornet had become a shadow of its former self. The 1957 Hornet wasn't a bad car, far from it. It had real muscle under the hood and a flashy hardtop coupe body. But by then, Hudson was no longer Hudson. It was a badge under American Motors Corporation, AMC. The magic was gone. Tonight, we'll explore how a once glorious nameplate ended up buried in obscurity, despite having all the ingredients of a muscle car, before muscle cars were even a thing. To understand the 1957 Hornet's failure, we need to understand what came before. From 1951 to 1954, the original Hudson Hornet was an absolute powerhouse. Thanks to its step-down chassis design, which placed the car's floor inside the frame rails, it had an incredibly low center of gravity. Pair that with the twin H-power dual-carb straight six, and you had a NASCAR-dominating machine. Drivers like Herb Thomas and Marshall Teague turned the Hudson Hornet into a motorsports legend. For a few golden years, Hudson was unbeatable in stock car racing, but by the mid-1950s, Hudson couldn't keep up with the big three. Sales fell, engineering stagnated. In 1954, Hudson was absorbed by Nash Kelvinator to form American Motors Corporation, AMC. And that's when things started to unravel. By 1957, the Hudson brand existed in name only. AMC had discontinued the original Hudson chassis after 1954. From 1955 onward, all Hudsons were badge-engineered Nash products, essentially Nash bodies with Hudson trim. The 1957 Hornet Hollywood was AMC's attempt to keep the Hudson name alive and appealing. It was a two-door hardtop coupe, the Hollywood designation, with glitzy styling and a new V8 engine. Key features: engine, 327 cubic inch AMC V8. Horsepower, up to 255 horsepower 4-barrel version. Transmission, 3-speed manual or optional hydromatic automatic body style. 2-door hardtop coupe. Performance, respectable acceleration for its day, especially in a relatively lightweight body. On paper, this was AMC's most powerful car of 1957. With over 250 horsepower and bold styling, it could have been positioned as a performance coupe, even an early muscle car. But AMC never marketed it that way. In fact, they barely marketed it at all. The 1957 Hudson Hornet Hollywood had plenty of style, in the exaggerated way typical of the late 1950s: jet-inspired tail fins, wraparound windshield, two-tone or tri-tone paint, chrome galore, sweeping side trim, and V emblems denoting the V8. To the casual buyer, it looked upscale, maybe even sporty, but underneath the sheet metal was a Nash platform with AMC suspension and steering, more cruiser than bruiser. The styling screamed excitement, the badge screamed heritage, but the driving experience was too soft to match either. By 1957, most Americans knew Hudson wasn't really Hudson anymore. It was a rebranded Nash, and it showed. Loyalists felt betrayed. New buyers didn't care. The Hornet name had once meant performance. Now it was slapped onto a car with no racing pedigree. American Motors was focused on economy, not performance. Their primary mission was to offer practical, compact alternatives to the Big Three. The 1957 Hornet was an outlier, a last gasp of power in a lineup that would soon be dominated by Ramblers and economy sedans. AMC didn't have the marketing muscle, dealer network, or enthusiasm to push the Hornet as a performance car. It simply didn't fit their direction. Unlike the original Hornet, the 1957 version never raced. There was no motorsports halo, no magazine tests, no pop culture push. It arrived quietly and disappeared even more quietly. Performance without promotion might as well not exist. The entire Hudson line sold poorly in 1957. Number 3, the 1954 Cadillac El Dorado 331 V8, examining its place in history as a luxurious cruiser with hidden muscle car DNA. Today we dive into one of the most paradoxical cars of the 1950s, the 1954 Cadillac El Dorado. On the surface, it was a luxury convertible, dripping with chrome, white walls, and prestige. It was Cadillac's image car, designed to turn heads, not burn rubber. And yet, under its long, elegant hood sat a 331 cubic inch V8, one of the most advanced engines of its time. Powerful, smooth, and efficient, it quietly foreshadowed the performance revolution that would soon sweep American roads. The 1954 El Dorado wasn't a muscle car. It was too soft, too plush, and too polite. But the mechanical foundation was there. Tonight we'll explore how the El Dorado's engineering excellence was masked by its luxurious persona, and how it represents a crucial chapter in the prehistory of American performance cars. By the early 1950s, Cadillac was at the top of the luxury game. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of success. Celebrities drove Cadillacs, presidents rode in Cadillacs. If you parked one in your driveway, it said everything you needed to say. The El Dorado, first introduced in 1953, was Cadillac's response to the post-war explosion of wealth and consumer appetite for glamour. It was expensive, rare, and dripping with prestige. By 1954, Cadillac had refined the formula, giving the El Dorado more dramatic styling and a more integrated design, but still keeping it exclusive. Yet beneath the chrome and leather was something unusual for a car of its type: serious performance hardware. Let's talk about the engine, the heart of this contradiction. Cadillac introduced the 331 V8 in 1949. At the time, it was revolutionary. Overhead valves, not flatheads. Short-stroke design, allowing higher revs. Lightweight construction, using cast iron. Higher compression ratio than most of its competitors. By 1954, Cadillac had refined this engine further, giving it more durability and smoother power delivery. In the El Dorado, it made around 230 horsepower, an impressive figure for the time, especially in a car not marketed for performance. This engine was responsive, torquey, and dependable. It powered Cadillac through the 1950s and even served as the foundation for high-performance derivatives in later years. If you're wondering how this relates to muscle cars, consider this. The formula of big V8, rear-wheel drive, and road presence started here, not in a Pontiac GTO showroom a decade later. The El Dorado wasn't just about the engine. The car itself was a technical showcase. Power steering and brakes were standard, rare for the time. Hydra-matic automatic transmission, a GM innovation, provided smooth shifting 12-volt electrical system, while others were still using 6-volt setups. Advanced suspension geometry, including independent front suspension for a better ride. It was built for effortless motion, not raw acceleration. But it had the hardware to surprise you. Even though it weighed about 4,500 pounds, the El Dorado could cruise at 90 miles per hour all day. 0 to 60 miles per hour came in just over 12 seconds. Not lightning fast, but respectable considering its size and purpose. The V8 never strained. It glided forward with authority, hinting at more performance than it dared to admit. Let's be clear, The 1954 El Dorado was not a muscle car. It was a high-luxury personal convertible. Its mission was to cosset, not corner. But there are three reasons why it remains important in muscle car history. The 331 V8 was the blueprint for power plants used throughout GM's divisions. This engine architecture, with tweaks and enlargements, eventually showed up in Buicks, Oldsmobiles, and even performance-tuned cars like the early 1960s Oldsmobile Starfire and the Buick Wildcat. Before this, high power usually meant rough idle, noisy valves, and smoky tailpipes. The 331 V8 was civilized muscle, a drivetrain that proved you could have big displacement and still be smooth, quiet, and luxurious. Number 2, the 1956 Chrysler New Yorker with the 354 Hemi V8, focusing on its overlooked power and lack of performance branding. Today, we're diving into one of the most intriguing and overlooked cars of the 1950s. The 1956 Chrysler New Yorker, equipped with the 354 Hemi V8. At first glance, the New Yorker was a luxurious, large sedan, embodying style and comfort for the American family or the professional class. It wasn't marketed as a performance machine, and for good reason. Chrysler's brand identity was built around refinement, power, and engineering prestige, not outright muscle or street performance. Yet beneath the polished veneer of this luxury sedan lurked a serious big block powerhouse. The 354 cubic inch Hemi V8 delivered over 280 horsepower, which was formidable for the time and class. In the mid-1950s, Chrysler was positioned as the engineering-driven luxury brand within the Big Three, alongside General Motors and Ford. Chrysler's cars were known for their advanced mechanical features, like the Hemi head engine, torsion bar suspension, and the TorqueFlite automatic transmission, all designed to deliver smoothness and reliability. The New Yorker was Chrysler's flagship sedan, large, elegant, and designed for comfort and status. Unlike the flashy and aggressive models from GM's Pontiac or Chevrolet divisions, Chrysler's approach was about prestige and power without the brashness. This meant the New Yorker was packed with advanced tech and muscle under the hood, but rarely got the muscle car label or the aggressive performance marketing we might expect today. The star of the 1956 New Yorker was its 354 cubic inch Hemi V8. This engine was a further development of Chrysler's iconic hemispherical combustion chamber design, which provided efficient combustion due to better airflow and spark plug positioning, high power output relative to displacement, smooth power delivery and strong torque, advanced valve train design reducing mechanical losses. With a factory rating of over 280 horsepower, this was one of the most powerful engines you could find in a luxury sedan at the time. Its torque output meant effortless acceleration, smooth cruising at highway speeds, and a strong feeling of confidence behind the wheel. The 354 Hemi was Chrysler's answer to GM's big block V8s and Ford's V8s, but it was cloaked in the quiet dignity of the New Yorker. Despite the strong numbers on paper, the 1956 New Yorker was never advertised or branded as a performance car. It was a luxury vehicle through and through, intended for buyers who wanted comfortable, plush interiors, smooth ride quality, quiet cabins, prestige and style. But the powertrain gave it an edge few competitors could match. The New Yorker could accelerate faster and handle highway speeds more confidently than many contemporaries in the same class. For example, the car's weight was around 4,500 pounds, but the 354 Hemi's torque made it feel lighter on the road. 0 to 60 mph times were respectable for the era, often in the low to mid 10-second range, which was quicker than many standard full-size sedans. The advanced torque converter and Hydra-Matic automatic transmission gave seamless and responsive power delivery. Still, no muscle decals or performance options packages were available. The New Yorker's buyers prized class and comfort over speed and street credibility. Several factors contributed to this powerhouse sedan being largely forgotten in muscle car history. Chrysler marketed the New Yorker as a luxury flagship, not a racer or street performer. Muscle cars were primarily a younger buyer's game, tied to brands like Pontiac, with the upcoming GTO, Chevrolet, and Ford. Unlike GM and Ford, Chrysler did not offer performance trims or aggressive options for the New Yorker. There was no New Yorker RT or Hemi package to highlight the power. The muscle car era hadn't officially started. Power in big sedans was often seen as a bonus, not a feature to brag about. Chrysler's own 300 series, introduced in 1955, was the company's true high-performance star, boasting even bigger power and racing heritage. The New Yorker, by comparison, was overshadowed by this more overtly performance-oriented sibling. Number 1, the 1955 Chrysler 300, focusing on why it's arguably the first true American muscle car, yet often overlooked in muscle car history. When we think of muscle cars, our minds often jump to the mid-1960s icons. The Pontiac GTO, the Ford Mustang, the Chevrolet Chevelle SS. However, the roots of muscle car culture stretch back a decade earlier. Today, we're going to examine a pioneering car that arguably started it all, the 1955 Chrysler 300. This was no ordinary sedan or cruiser. It was a purpose-built, aggressive, and powerful machine that brought together raw horsepower, cutting-edge engineering, and race-bred technology in a way that prefigured the muscle car explosion to come. Yet despite its significance, the 1955 Chrysler 300 is often left out of muscle car discussions due to its exclusivity and the fact that it was a larger, more luxurious car than the compact or mid-size muscle cars of the 1960s. In the early 1950s, Chrysler was fighting to establish its identity and prestige among the big three automakers. The company needed a halo car, a statement vehicle that showcased engineering superiority and performance prowess. The answer was the Chrysler 300, introduced in 1955 as part of Chrysler's letter series performance models. The 300 was the model name, while subsequent years added letters, like 300B, 300C, to denote evolution and increasing power. This car was designed from the ground up to be a high-performance luxury coupe, built for speed, handling, and style. At the heart of the 1955 Chrysler 300 was the legendary 331 cubic inch Hemi V8, producing a then stunning 300 horsepower. This was a significant milestone, as no other American production car at the time offered that level of power. Key features of this engine and performance package included Hemi, hemispherical combustion chambers. This advanced design allowed for more efficient airflow and combustion, boosting power and torque significantly over typical V8s. Dual 4-barrel carburetors, feeding the engine with a rich air-fuel mixture to maximize performance. Heavy-duty suspension and brakes. The 300 was engineered to handle its power with improved stability and control, crucial for high-speed driving and racing. 3-speed manual transmission, sporty and direct, allowing the driver full command of the engine's power. The 300 was designed to compete on the track as well as the road. Its performance credentials were proven on circuits like the NASCAR speedways, where it dominated competition. Visually, the 1955 Chrysler 300 was a bold statement. It featured a low, wide stance with a pronounced front grille and aerodynamic styling. The fastback roofline and sharp tail fins gave it a modern and aggressive look, contrasting with the more conservative designs of contemporaries. Unlike many luxury cars of the era, the 300's styling hinted at its performance potential rather than just comfort and status. This styling reflected the car's dual personality, a luxury coupe with muscle car aggression. The 1955 Chrysler 300 wasn't just a street performer, it had legitimate racing credentials. It competed successfully in NASCAR, dominating many races thanks to its powerful engine and solid handling. The letter series models evolved from this initial performance platform, leading to increasingly powerful versions in subsequent years, 300B, 300C, 300D, and so forth. This track success helped cement Chrysler's reputation for power and engineering innovation. Despite its significance, the 1955 Chrysler 300 often gets overlooked in mainstream muscle car discussions for several reasons. Unlike the compact or mid-size muscle cars of the 1960s, the 1955 300 was a large, expensive luxury coupe, a car for the wealthy, not the masses. This exclusivity limited its impact on popular muscle car culture. Only around 2,200 units were made in 1955, making it rare compared to the mass-market muscle cars that followed. The term muscle car wasn't even coined until the 1960s. The 1955 300 was seen more as a high-performance luxury car rather than a raw street muscle machine. Chrysler eventually shifted its muscle efforts to other models, and the 300 letter series evolved more into a luxury performance hybrid rather than a full-on muscle car.